Thank you very much. That was wonderful. One quick question that I might have missed to begin with was that the metabolomics was targeted or untargeted to begin with?
They were
Targeted. Have you made any effort or have you have any thought about doing untargeted method to compare between the Mediterranean and not Mediterranean groups?
Well, we are now working on that. We have collected the non-targeted metabolites, and we are applying new methods. There are thousands of non-targeted metabolites, and we have the charge and the mass of each one, and we need to identify at the end of the day, eventually, which are the, but so far we have not published this. We are working on that.
Which brings my same question. Was it your targeted metabolomics were kind of biased, or what was based on? How did you pick up the molecules?
Well, you have a procedure called elastic net regression. So it has several steps. In the first step, you do a one-by-one regression in order to identify associations between each of the singular metabolites and the 14 points. And then you need to take into account the external validity that this selection may have. So you are doing a penalization. So this is a regularization of a regression with several iterations. So you iterate the process several times in order to reduce the slope, the coefficients. This is highly technical, but elastic net regression combines the advantages of bridge regression and lasso regression, so they are combined. It is highly technical. But
I know that we're doing a lot of metabolomics, but again, my question is, how did you choose out the metabolites? I understand the regression analysis of the data analysis. How did you pick up the molecules that you were looking with metabolomics? That was my question.
It was based on the selection of a significant association after all this process, taking into account the false discovery rate.
I have a question, and it's two proportions. More or less it's in your speech, but to be more synthetic and clear. The first proportion is what could be the proportion of the oil in the Mediterranean diet? First. And the second, well, this is the first. And the second, well, maybe I say after.
Medimed had objective results regarding the reduction in cardiovascular disease, but also in breast cancer, atrial fibrillation, peripheral artery disease, and type 2 diabetes. So we have hard endpoints with our clinical trial. Our intervention consisted in both groups to tell them to use exclusively olive oil. So the proportion, the target was 100% for all culinary uses.
And the second proposal, but it's more or less in the reply. What is the proportion of the contribution of the good health of the oil in the Mediterranean?
This is difficult to ascertain. So we, in the meta-analysis that I have presented it, and it is currently submitted, we saw that for the reduction in cardiovascular disease, we may have around a little bit more than 10%, 12%, 15%, in that range of reduction in risk for every 25 grams more per day. So you are comparing two persons with everything the same, keeping every other factor equal, and one of them consumes 25 grams and the other 0 or 35 and the other 10. So for an increase in 25 grams per day. But in fact, in two of our results of PREDIMED, we did find significant protection only by a Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil, but not by Mediterranean diet plus nuts. That was the case of breast cancer, and it was based in very few cases, and also for atrial fibrillation. And even in the breast cancer study, there was a reduction, but it was not statistically significant with Mediterranean diet plus nuts. And in fact, in these two studies, we saw in an observational analysis of the data that the higher the consumption of olive oil, of extra virgin olive oil, the lower the risk in a linear trend. So the higher the better, in the range that it can amount to even 20% of calories from extra virgin olive oil. So it was a lot. So in that range, you see that the higher the intake of olive oil, the lower the risk of breast cancer, and the same for atrial fibrillation.
For mechanistical purpose, did you analyze parameters of oxidative stress and/or inflammation?
Very nice paper done by the group of Barcelona under the direction of Ramon Struck and Rosa Lamuela by Alexander Medina Ramon. It is published in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology several years ago. So we saw that the higher the excretion of polyphenols in urine, the lower the levels of several inflammatory biomarkers, including TNF-alpha, C-reactive protein, and interleukin-6 and other biomarkers. And also in Annals of Internal Medicine, a paper also by Ramon, published in 2006, a long time ago. We saw in the first 3 months of PREDIMED with 10% of participants, we saw with extra virgin olive oil a reduction in CRP, interleukin-6, and also the adhesion molecules, VCAM and ICAM, that was observed at the beginning of the trial. And also we have seen in other sub-studies of PREDIMED the reduction in the oxidation of LDL in a paper published in Archives of Internal Medicine by Monsefito. And also we have seen an improvement of the functionality of HDL particles that was published in Circulation. So we saw that the functions of the HDL particles improved with the extra virgin olive oil specifically.
I have a question about the, if you looked at any preliminary data on the changes of the metas over the last 2 years during the pandemic.
Well, we don't have the data. Perhaps we are analyzing them, but we don't have a published paper as far as I know with I'm not aware of that, with the changes in metas. In other Spanish studies, they have done something like that using our score, but we haven't. We are now analyzing in the PREDIMED Plus the result of the intervention that we are doing. PREDIMED Plus is not only olive oil or Mediterranean diet. It also includes physical activity and weight loss. So we are collecting all the data. We are analyzing them now to see whether or not the intervention was able to get protection against the Mediterranean diet. In clinical nutrition, as of last April or May of 2021, we published a study with almost 10,000 participants of the SAN cohort, and we showed that the higher the adherence to the Mediterranean diet, the lower the risk of getting infected with COVID-19. And that was thereafter replicated by another group in Italy, and also by another group in Johns Hopkins, and also by Jordi Merino in a paper published in GATT. So there are now some evidence of the protection by a high-quality food pattern against the infection and also the severity of the COVID infection. But the results regarding whether or not the pandemic has spoiled the food habits of the Spanish population are mixed. Some, but they are published by other groups. They are not fully consistent. They don't give you a message. Of course, body weight has gone up. This is consistent in several studies.
One quick note adding on to what Miguel said, there actually are randomized data showing benefits of B vitamins for reduction and progression of HIV that were done in Africa, which I think provides a very interesting basis that we know that diet can reduce progression, at least in maybe infection from viral agents. So I think it's a very important area. So with that, why don't we wind up this session and we will adjourn for a coffee break with lots of good polyphenols.